Joseph Smith's apologetic paper. Apologetic means making arguments for and against. The abrogation of Quranic verses. This is a key that is a deciding factor almost, the biggest deciding factor. The abrogation of Quranic verses presents a problem for Muslims today. As we all know, a man can make mistakes and correct them. But this is not the case with God. God has infinite wisdom and cannot contradict himself. Abrogation flies in the face of Surah 6:34 and 1065, which they state, "There is none that can alter the words and decrees of Allah." An even more damaging pronouncement is made in Surah 4:82. Do they not consider the Qur'an? Had it been from other than Allah, they would surely have found therein much discrepancies. And yet, much discrepancies, that's what we find. Muslim authorities try to explain the internal contradictions in the Qur'an by stating that certain passages of the Qur'an are annulled, the word mansuke, by verses revealed chronologically later than themselves. That doesn't change the fact that they're erroneous and have to be annulled. The verses which replace them are referred to as nasikh. Yet, there is by no means any certainty as to which disagreeing verses are mansukh and which are nasikh, since the order in which the Qur'an was written down was not done chronologically, but according to the length of the surahs. From the preceding section, we have found that even the text at our disposal was found and collated piecemeal, leaving us little hope of delineating which surahs were the more authentic. Furthermore, Muslim tradition admits that many of the surahs were not given to Muhammad in one piece. According to tradition, some portions were added to other surahs under the direction of Muhammad, with further additions to the former surahs. Therefore, within a given surah, there may be found ayahs, which were early, and others which were quite late. How, then, could we know which were the more authoritative? The law of abrogation is taught by the Qur'an in Surah 2, 106 and 108, stating, "We substitute one revelation for another." This is echoed in Surah 1786, which reads, "If it were our will, we could take away that which we have sent thee in by inspiration." In Surah 16, 101, the law of abrogation is clearly defined as one verse being substituted by a better verse. Verse 101 read, "None of our revelations do we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, but we substitute something better or similar. Knowest thou not that Allah hath power over all things?" Why does he keep changing things? Jalala-ud-Din estimated the number of abrogations at between 5 to 500. Wow, really? Little to 5? Others say it stands closer to 225. What this shows is that the science of abrogation is an obviously inexact science indeed, as no one really knows how many of the verses are to be abrogated. Underlying this claim of abrogation is another concern. How can a divine revelation be improved upon? Would it not have been perfect from the start? Yusuf Ali, in his defense of abrogation, claims that there is a need for progressive revelation within Scripture, saying, "Its form may differ according to the needs and exigencies of the time." Christians believe in progressive revelation as well, as God reveals and changes his will for a people as they change culturally over a period of generations. I'm not so sure that that is true. I'd have to think about that. There are cultural differences, but God doesn't say change cultural differences, and he doesn't change his will. He changes his method of operation, but his will for the individuals are to be godly, trust alone in Christ alone, grow as a Christian. His will for that has not changed, so I disagree with that. The problem with Surahs 2:106, 1786, and 16:101 is that they do not refer to revelations given prior to Muhammad, but rather uniquely to the Quranic verses themselves. One cannot claim progressive revelation within a space of only 20 years. This was the time in which the Qur'an was written. The period found in the previous scriptures spans 1,500 years. People and cultures change in that amount of time. Thus, the revelations would reflect those changes. To demand the same for a revelation of a mere 20 years suggests that God is not all-knowing. The only other person can be that the recorder or the recorder made corrections and then came up with a revelation to authenticate those corrections. Sounds like politics. While you decide, let's look at some of these abrogations. Some examples of these abrogations are Surah 2:141 to 144. We find the change of the Qibla, the direction of prayer from Mecca to Jerusalem and back to Mecca. 2. The inheritance laws in Surahs 4:7 to 180 provide an equal share for women and men, and then is doubled for men in Surah 4:11. 4:7. From what is left by parents and those nearest related, there is a share for men and a share for women, whether the property be small or large, a determinate share. Here the context gives an apparent equal share for men and women, but several surahs below it is contradicted. Allah thus directs in 4:11, you as regards your children's inheritance, to the male a portion equal to that of 2 females. If only daughters, 2 or more, their share is 2/3 of the inheritance. If only one, her share is 1/2. For parents, a 1/6 share of the inheritance to each if the deceased left children. If no children, and the parents are the only heirs, the mother has 1/3. If the deceased left brothers or sisters, the mother has 1/6. Keeps changing. The distribution in all cases after the payment of legacies and debts. Ye know not whether your parents or your children are nearest to you in benefit. These are settled portions ordained by Allah, and Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. After making the change, sounds like Allah is constantly changing his mind. Note the discrepancy. Any honest reader will. And furthermore, it just doesn't add up. Surah 4:11 to 12, 176, speaking of the inheritance law, specifies that when a man dies and leaves behind, for instance, 3 daughters, 2 parents, and a wife, the 3 daughters will receive 2/3 of the inheritance, 1/3 will go to the parents together, according to verse 4:11, and 1/8 for the wife, 4:12, which adds up to more than the available estate. You can't give away more than the total amount. The second example, if a man leaves only his wife, his mother, his wife, and 2 sisters, then the mother receives 1/3, 4:11, 1/4 for the wife, 4:12, 2/3 for the 2 sisters, which then adds up to 15/12 of the available property. I don't know if God can add. The change of night prayers from a full night in Surah 73:2-4 to a half or less, or whatever was easy to do in Surah 73:20. Point 4, the change of punishment for adulteresses, beginning with life imprisonment, found in Surah 4:15, and then changed to 100 strokes by flogging, according to the Surah 24:2. Remember that these 2 examples make no mention of the previous missing ayah, which prescribes the stoning for those who commit adultery. It is also interesting to note that homosexuals were let off if they repented, according to Surah 4:17, though the same allowance was not given for heterosexuals. Point 5. The change of the retaliation laws, where retaliation for the crime murder was confined to people of equal rank, slave for slave, in Surah 2:178. Then it was to be carried out only against the murderer by the heir, Surah 17:33. Note, Ali adds qisas and forgiving to the Arabic. 6. The change of the days of creation from 6 to 8. 41:9. Is it that you deny him, Allah, who created the earth in 2 days, and you claim others to be equal to him? He is the Lord of all the worlds. And the next verse begins with what verse 9 depicts as already created in 2 days. 41:10. He set on it, the already created earth, mountains, and bestowed it with blessings, and Allah estimated all its sustenance in 4 days, equally for those who ask prayers. So far, then, we have 6 days, 2 for creating the earth, and 4 more for settling on the earth, mountains, etc., items which add to the earth's creation and were not an intrinsic part of its previous creation, items that are described as sustenance, i.e. that which sustains the earth, but not that which created it. Interesting choice of words. 41:1. Then Allah commanded the heaven, and it was still smoke. He said to it and to earth, come together willingly or unwillingly. They said, we do come together in willing obedience. Then equals a continuance of this creative action by Allah. We have Allah's work on the heavens to make them into 7 heavens, which was still unformed smoke after 6 days. Notice the word still, corroborating a sequence of events still not completed after 6 days. Confusing. 41:12. So Allah decreed them as 7 heavens, one above the other in 2 days, and revealed to each heaven its orders. And we, Allah, adorned the lowest heaven with lights and retentions, gravity, such as is the decree of the exalted, the knowledgeable. Notice that the word rendered in appears in the same context of all of Allah's actions, which are reported in creating the universe 3 times. Notice the words then, still, and so, which demand an ongoing sequence. Hence, the context demands that the word in total length of time for the particular accomplishment of Allah in a series of events needs to be added up to 8, as opposed to determining that the word in means inside the time of, or within. Another Arabic word needs to have been in the original text to be rendered inside the time of, or within, which is not in the original Arabic text. The phrase in 2 days in English demands the interpretation a 2-day duration, and in 4 days a 4-day duration. Furthermore, the context would be ridiculous if one said God created the earth in 2 days and added everything to the earth within 4 days, if what is intended is the addition are within 2 days. This is even more ridiculous when the same word is used for in the phrases in 2 days and in 4 days. So why not then simply stipulate that the time it took to add everything, instead of being vague with within 4 days, if that is what is meant, fix that, if that is what is meant, and it is not. Doesn't God know? Besides, the word within is simply not there in Arabic or American English. Point 7. The change of the hierarchy of prophets. Where they were initially equal, surahs 384, 228, 285, 136, and then some are elevated above the others, surah 2, 253. Guess I could fix that. See Ali's note, 289. Point 8. The changes in intercession, at first done by angels and Muhammad, we have those in those surahs, and then were not acceptable to Allah. 9.9. The sword versus the call to fight and slay the pagan idolaters, wherever you find them, surah 9.5, or strike off their heads in battle, surah 47.5, or make war on the unbelievers in Allah until they pay tribute, surah 9.29, or fight then until a religion be all of it, Allah's 8.39 of surah, or